We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Aleph and Aleph and Meseches Sukkah. This is Sukkah Daf 41a. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas tanoim in the Brisa whether you could redeem Meiser Sheni and Shvius onto live animals. And Rava now says that whole machlokas is bizacharim, is only by male animals. Rashi over here says bizacharim she'ein megadlim mehem velodos, meaning by male animals, they don't have babies. You don't use them to make babies. Nevertheless, the Rabbanan say by Zecharim we make a gezerah because since by Nekevos you're going to end up raising a flock, and that's going to cause a delay in your using up either the Meiser or the Shvius in the proper time. So since by Nekevos it's a problem, the Rabbanan say it's a problem by Zecharim, and Rabbi Meir says it's not a problem by Zecharim. Avol b'Nekevos, but Rava says when it comes to Nekevos, when it comes to female animals, Divrei Hakol al Shchutin Mischalin al Chayin ein Mischalin, everybody would agree there. You can only redeem the Shvius or the Meiser Sheni on animals that are already shechted, that are already dead, but not on animals that are alive. Why? As we said before, Gezeira Shamayigdal Mehen Adarim. It is a Gezeira, maybe you're going to use these animals to raise flocks, and again, you're not going to use up the Kedusha Shvius or the Kedusha's Meiser, you're not going to use it up in the proper amount of time. And the Gemara now continues, Amar Rav Ashi says, the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar that we had before, there was a machlokas by Shvius, when it comes to transferring the Kedusha Shvius onto money, let's say. So do you have to do it derech mekach? Does it have to be through a sale? Or do we say that could even be done derech hilol? You could simply say, I'm taking the Kedusha of these peiros and I'm putting it onto this money. So Rav Ashi says that machlokas was bepri rishon. That whole machlokas was only true by that first set of fruits, as Rashi over here explains. Amar Rav Ashi, machlokas de Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yochanan. Machlokas between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yochanan was bepri rishon, by the first fruit, meaning bepeiros shvius, meaning by the original fruits of shvius. Hu de Amar Rabbi Elazar, that's where Rabbi Elazar says derech hilol lo, that you can't do it derech hilol, it has to be done derech mekach, mishum the darish smuchim, because he darshans the fact that the psukim are near each other. And again, Rabbi Yochanan says no such requirement. It could be derech hilol as well. That's by pri rishon. Avol bepri sheni, but if it comes to the pri sheni, meaning as Rashi says, pri sheni demei shvius. Let's say I have money of shvius and it has the kedusha, and now I want to take that. So in other words, the money got the kedusha from the peiros, and now I want to put the kedusha onto something else. So avol bepri sheni, when it comes to pri sheni, divrei hakol, everybody agrees bein derech mekach, bein derech hilul. It doesn't matter if you do it. You could do it through a sale. You could do it derech hilul. It's always going to put the kedusha onto the new item. So the Gemara continues, V'hadek atani lokach lokach. Now, how come in the Brisa it said lokach lokach, as if there were several cases, as if we might be talking about pri rishon, we might be talking about pri sheni? So the Gemara just says, no, I did the tana reisha lokach, tananami seifa lokach. Since in the beginning it says lokach, so therefore it says lokach at the end. But really, the whole machlokus was only by pri rishon. As Rashi over here says, V'hadetanya bebraisa de Messiah, that which we had the Brisa, which came as a support, and it said lokach lokach bekulu. It said the word lokach over and over. Bein bepri rishon, bein bedamav. It was talking about the fruit. It was talking about the damav. It was talking about pri sheni. The katani lokach bebasar yayin v'lo katani chilel basar beyayin. He uses the word lokach, doesn't say chilel, and that was brought as a support for Rebbe Elazar. It was meant to say you can't do it derech hilul. You can only do it derech mekach. So why does it say lokach lokach? Rebbe Elazar only said it by pri rishon. He didn't say it by pri sheni. By pri sheni he said you could do it derech hilul. So the Gemara again just says that the Rav Ashi just says no, since it said the word lokach in the reisha, it says in the sefer lokach b'reina chinami. By pri sheni everyone would agree it doesn't have to be derech mekach. It could be derech hilul. And so the Gemara continues, Eisvei Ravina Rav Ashi. So now Ravina asks Rav Ashi the following question. It says over here, Misha Yeshlo Sela Shel Shvius. Let's say a person has a coin, a sela of Shemitah, Ubikesh Likach Bo Chalak, and he wants to use that coin in order to buy a shirt. As Rashi over here says, Ubikesh Likach Lo Chalak, Veino Yachal. He's not able to buy a shirt with the money of Shvius. Ta'atorah Amra Lo Achla. Because as we mentioned before at the beginning of the Yom, the Torah says, by the Peiros Shvius, you got to consume it right away. Besochas Man, within the amount of time. V'lo l'schora, you're not allowed to do for business to make profit for long term. V'zem miskayim l'shana haba. If you're going to buy a shirt, that's really the same thing. You're keeping it for the next year also. Everything from Shvius has to be consumed. So the issue over here in the Brisa is, how are you going to take a sell of Shvius and use it to buy a shirt? So the Brisa says, Ketzad Yasa, what should he do? He should go by a storekeeper who knows him, who understands that, who's going to go along with the following arrangement. He says to him, Tainli besela peiros. First he'll say to him, give me fruit for the sela. Now that's fine, because you're allowed to consume fruits with the demei shvius. V'nosein lo, and he gives him the fruit. V'chozer v'yomer lo, and then he says to him as follows: Hare peiros halalu nesunim lach b'matana. Says, these peiros that you just gave me, I'm going to give them to you as a gift. V'omer lo, hey loch sela zub matana. And the storekeeper now says, take your seller back b'matana. So now what basically has just happened over here is that you've gotten the kedusha off the money, because the kedusha now transferred from the money to the peiros. Now it's peiros shvius, but the money has no kedusha. V'alo lokech ben masha yirtza. Now you have a great opportunity. You can use this seller. It no longer has the kedusha shvius. He can buy whatever he wants. And so that's the solution that the brisa has. So the Gemara now says, one second, look at this brisa. But over here in this case, the pri sheni, what is the case over here? It's pri sheni. He's taking the money of shvius and he's trying to get the kedusha off the money of shvius onto these other fruits. And what do we do over here? He could have just done chilul. He could have just picked up the money and said, the kedusha that's on this money, I want it to go onto the fruit. What do you have to do a whole sale for in order to transfer? But it seems to be that by pri sheni as well, there's a requirement for a sale. And we just said before that everybody agrees that that's not the case. We said by pri sheni, everybody agrees bein derech mekach, bein derech chilul. So that doesn't seem to be the case. So the Gemara says you're right. Elamer Rav Ashi, rather Rav Ashi says the exact opposite. Machlokas b'pri sheni. The whole machlokas Rebbe Elazar and Rebbe Yochanan is by pri sheni. That's where Rebbe Elazar is strict and says it has to be done derech mekach. That would explain this brisa. Aval b'pri rishon, but when it comes to pri rishon, divrei akol derech mekach in derech chilul. Everybody is strict by pri rishon. That wasn't even a machlokas. Everybody agrees it must be derech mekach. Even Rabbi Yochanan agrees it must be derech mekach and it cannot be derech chilul. But the Gemara says if that's the case, if Rabbi Yochanan agrees by pri rishon, it must be derech mekach. So v'hadik atani, that which we learned in the brisa earlier, we brought a brisa as a support for Rabbi Yochanan. And what does it say? It says echad shvius v'echad meiser sheni. It talks about both shvius and meiser sheni, and it uses the word mischalelin. That was the whole proof to Rabbi Yochanan that you can do it derech chilul. But it says over there, it doesn't say it's pri sheni, it says it's shvius. Shvius implies the actual fruits of shvius. That's pri rishon. And apparently chilul worked. So the Gemara says, no, my shvius de mei shvius. What does it mean, shvius in that price? It means the money of shvius. It's really pri sheni. It's not the actual shmita fruit. It is money that has the kedusha of shvius, and that's what you can do. You can do it derech chilul. And now the Gemara explains that you have to say that because it's true by Meiser as well. Dilotei mahachin, if you don't say that, Meiser mamish. You think when we were talking about Meiser before, again, when we started the oven, we talked about the fact that the Meiser can only be on animals that are not alive, but not on animals that are alive. You're transferring the Kedusha, you're taking the Meiser and you're putting the Kedusha onto these animals. So if you think we're talking about actual Meiser Sheni, and you're taking that Meiser Sheni and you're putting the Kedusha's Meiser Sheni onto animals, you can't just take Meiser Sheni, the grain, let's say, of Meiser Sheni, and put it onto animals anyway. You have to put it into money. The halacha is when you take the Meiser Sheni, you're far away from Yerushalayim, you put the Kedusha onto money. So it can't be we're talking about Meiser Sheni, really. Ela demei Meiser, obviously what we were talking about is you have money of Meiser Sheni, now you want to use that money to buy some animals, you're outside Yerushalayim, you want to use that money to buy some animals and bring those animals up to Yerushalayim. So that was a machlokas before, whether it can be live animals or whether no, that's a problem, because then again you'll raise flocks and you're not going to use the Meiser, you're not going to consume the Meiser right away. That was the machlokas. So anyways, you see clearly we're talking about demei Meiser, even though it uses the word Meiser. Hachanami demei Shvius. So to over here, we're talking about the money of Shvius. Again, it's not the actual fruits of the Shemitah year, but it's really pri sheni. It's the money that has the Kedusha Shvius, and that's why it says you can do it derech chilul. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Barishona hayalulav nitel b'mikdash shiva uv'medina yom echad. Originally, it used to be they used to take the lulav, the mitzvah of lulav, meaning in the Beis Hamikdash for all 7 days, but outside the Beis Hamikdash, you just took it for 1 day. As Rashi over here says, "B'mikdash shiva kidadrashinan b'toras kohanim miusmachtem l'fnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim v'lo b'gvulin shivas yamim." It's only 7 days that you take the lulav in l'fnei Hashem Elokeichem in the Beis Hamikdash, but in the Medina, as Rashi says, "B'Medina b'Yerushalayim," means in Yerushalayim. Shafu kegvulim. Yerushalayim also is not considered the Mikdash; it's considered like outside the Beis Hamikdash, so they would only take it 1 day. Mishachar Beis Hamikdash, but once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai shehei lulav nitel b'Medina shiva zecher l'Mikdash. Hamikdash. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made an institution. He made a decree that you have to take lulav even outside, even in the Medina. You have to take it 7 days, and that's going to be a zecher. It's going to be a remembrance for the way the lulav used to be taken for 7 days in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Mishnah concludes, V'sheyehei Yom Hanaf Kulo Aser. And also the Yom Hanaf is going to be entirely Aser, the day of waving. And Rashi over here explains the reference. V'sheyehei Yom Hanaf Shel Omer. We're talking about the day of the waving of the Omer. Now, normally, when they had a Beis HaMikdash, they would bring the Omer, and that would permit the grain that was Chadash. Dahainu Tez Zayin B'Nisan. That refers to the 16th of Nisan. They used to bring the Omer on the second day of Pesach, which was the 16th of Nisan. So he instituted that Kulo Aser B'Chadash. Now that we have no Beis HaMikdash, that whole day, you're not allowed to have Chadash that day. You have to wait till the next day. Uvi'od HaMikdash Kayim. Now, while the Beis HaMikdash was around, Mishakarav HaOmer Hayu Ochlin Chadash Bo Bayom. Once the Omer was actually brought, that would matter Chadash. You could have Chadash that day. K'dichsiv Ad Haviachem. It says until you bring the Omer. Ucheshacharav Habayis. Now, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Mutter Min HaTorah Misheheir and Mizrach. Rashi explains that right away in the morning already on the 16th, on a Doraisa level, you could have Chadash. No Beis HaMikdash, there's no Omer, it's Mutter right away from the morning. Kedavar b'Menachos, like it says in Menachos, Kasav Echad Omer Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh, Dahainu Heir HaMizrach, Kasav Echad Omer Ad Haviachem, HaKetzad, Bizman Di'ika Omer Ad Haviachem. We darshan the Psukim. One pasuk seems to say in the morning, the other one seems to say when you bring the Omer. How does it work? So if there is an Omer, you got to wait till you bring it. Uvizman deleka Omer ad etzem, and if there's no Omer, so then you just wait till the day. And the Mishnah is coming to tell us that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along and said, no, we're going to be stricter than the Doraisa, and we're going to say the whole day is Aser. And the Gemara explained exactly the reason why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was strict. So the Gemara says, Minolon davdin on Zeichel HaMikdash. The Gemara starts off and says, from where do we have a source that we should do things, Zeichel HaMikdash? The whole idea in this Mishnah is that Zeichel HaMikdash, we take lulav for 7 days. How do you know a concept of Zeichel HaMikdash? And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, the Amar Krok, because the Pasuk says, Kiela arucha lachu mimakosayach erpoich, talks about the fact that I will heal you, and I will heal your wounds, I'll bring you health. Ne'um Hashem, so says Hashem, ki nidche karu lach Tzion hi, because they're calling you an outcast, referring, it is Tzion. Doresh ein la, there's no one who seeks it out. And so the Gemara darshans Doresh ein la. It says no one is seeking out Tzion. Mechlal de boy drisha. That implies that we do need. There's a requirement to seek it out. Meaning, how do we seek out Tzion? How do we seek out the Beis Hamikdash? The answer is we do things Zeichel HaMikdash. We do things as a remembrance for the Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. V'sheyehei Yom Henef, on the day of he made an institution that on the day that they would wave the Omer, that entire day would be Aser and Chadash. So what's the reason why he was strict? Really, it should have been, as we said before, right when it's sunrise on that day of the 16th, Chadash should be mutter, because there is no Omer once the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. So the Gemara says, my time, what's the reason? Meheru Yibana Beis HaMikdash, because one day, speedily, the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. V'yomru, and people will get confused. V'yomru, and people will say, Eshtakad milo achalnu beheir mizrach. Didn't we eat last year right away in the morning of the 16th? So hashtanami nechol. So now also we should eat on the morning of the 16th, and they won't realize. V'inu lo yadi, and they don't understand, they don't know. Deshtake de lo have a Beis HaMikdash, that last year when there was no Beis HaMikdash, heir mizrach hiter, that once the sun rises, so then on the 16th the Chadash is mutter. Hashta di'ika Beis HaMikdash omer matir. But now that there's a Beis HaMikdash, they don't realize that it's the Omer that's matir. So because of that potential confusion, that's why he said that entire day should be Aser. And so the Gemara continues, the Ivni Emas. When exactly was the Beis HaMikdash rebuilt that you have this concern? People won't realize they have to wait for the Omer to be brought. Ilema Divni B'Shitzar. The case is that the Beis HaMikdash was built on the 16th. So if that's the case, not a problem at all. Harei Hitter Heir Mizrach. At that point, the Beis HaMikdash is built on the 16th. And at that point, when the sun rose on the 16th, there was no Beis HaMikdash, there was no Omer, so it's going to be mutter anyway at the beginning of the day. It's not going to be a problem. So Ela Divni B'Chamesar. So the case must be that the Beis HaMikdash was built on the 15th, or perhaps even a little earlier than the 15th. The point is the Beis HaMikdash was built a little earlier, so then Mechatzos Hayom Ulahal and Tishrei, you still shouldn't have to Aser. He shouldn't have made an institution that the entire 16th is a problem. He should have said that you wait until Chatzos, because when there is an Omer, we always assume that it's brought by Chatzos. That's because we learned in a Mishnah, Harachok and Mutarin Mechatzos Hayom Ulahal. People who are far away from the Beis HaMikdash, they don't know exactly what's going on. They already can assume Chodesh is mutter from Chatzos and onward. Because Bezdin is not lazy about it. In other words, the point is, even if you were concerned that people will get confused and they'll think that it's going to be right away from the morning, you don't have to make the whole day Asr. You just have to say it's Asr until Chatzos, because if the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, won't it certainly be brought before Chatzos? And so for sure by Chatzos it's okay. So what did he have to say? That the entire 16th is Asr and Chodesh. So the Gemara says, no, the scenario might be as follows. Lo no tzricha, it's needed in the following scenario. The ivni belelya inami samach l'shkias achama. The Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt at night, or it was rebuilt near Shkia, which Rashi says basically the same basic suggestion. The idea being there wasn't a lot of time, and so they wouldn't have been able to get it done by Chatzos in such a situation. Rashi over here says, Lo tzricha divni belelya, kolomar l'shema yibana belelya chayish, v'lo yipenuyim liktzor ha'omer at samach l'yom. They're not going to have time to harvest the omer until it gets close to day. And Rashi explains here, V'yesh torach harbe ba'omer. It's a difficult thing to do the omer. There's a whole process. They have to dry it out. Shal kaloyim, etzovernoso she'ezuvameimav, v'tochnoso b'rechayim. There's a grinding process. Shal grusos, manifroso b'yirgim olnafa. They have to sift through it. Begasa b'daka ken hamir hasam. V'zeshalo yuchlu l'sasik bo mitchilas laylan. If they couldn't start doing this at night, because the Beis HaMikdash was built then, lo yaspiko lakriv l'machar kodem chatzos. It's going to be a situation they're not going to be able to bring it before chatzos. So you might have such a scenario, so he said the whole day is Asr. Inami divni v'chameser samach l'shkias achama v'hihi. Rashi says the same idea. If it's built on the 15th near Shkias achama, it's the same basic problem. And then Rashi adds an interesting note over here. V'kasha, if you're going to ask as follows, the v'lai leino nivna. Number one, you can't build the Beis HaMikdash at night. The kaimel and b'shvuas dein b'ni Beis HaMikdash b'layla. Dechsivu v'yom hakim. It says in the day it's put up. V'lo b'chameser shu yomtiv. Also, you can't build the Beis HaMikdash on the 15th because that's yomtiv. The kaimel and b'shvuas dein b'ni Beis HaMikdash docha yomtiv. It says in Shvuas that the building of the Beis HaMikdash is not docha yontif. So how do we even explain this whole Gemara? So Rashi answers, Hani mili binyan haboni b'diyadim. These rules apply to a Beis HaMikdash that is built by humans, by human hands. Avol mikdash ha'aser shenu mitzapim, but the mikdash in the future that we're looking forward to, bonoy u'meshuchlahu yigla v'yavu mishama. It's going to come from the heavens. Shenemar mikdash Hashem konu yadecha. So all these things are not problems. And in any case, that's going to be the scenario. That's going to be the scenario that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was concerned with. And the Gemara continues, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Amra. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai here said that the whole 16th is Asr, he's actually following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. D'Amar ben HaTorah Asr. Rabbi Yehuda actually says that on a Doraisa level, it's a problem the whole day of the 16th. T'chsiv, as the pasuk says, and Rashi over here says, b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda, Osa shita shahaya Rabbi Yehuda shaya mi talmidei talmidav. Point over here that Rashi is making is Rabbi Yehuda was not before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yehuda was well after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was from the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. But the point is, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Yehuda were saying the same shita. Dorish achrav, dorish gamhu biyamav. That same idea that Rabbi Yehuda was saying in his generation, that's really what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was based on. In other words, what Rav Nachman Yitzchak is saying is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wasn't an institution. It's a doraisa halacha that it's also the entire 16th. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis.